friends. Here we are with Chapter 3. Yikes. Jack opened his eyes. The air was hot and steamy. It looks like we landed in some bushes, said Annie. She was peeking out of the treehouse window. Peanut was peeking out of Annie's pocket. Jack peeked out of the treehouse too. They had landed in a sea of shiny green leaves. Outside there were beautiful flowers, bright butterflies and birds, just like in the book. That's strange, said Jack. I wonder why we didn't land in a tree. We always land in a tree. I don't know, said Annie, but let's hurry and find the thing for Morgan so we can get back home before we meet any big bugs. Wait, this seems weird, said Jack. I don't understand why we landed in bushes. I'd better read about this. Oh, come on, said Annie. We don't even need the ladder. We can just climb out the window. Annie put Peanut in her pocket, and she stuck one leg out of the window. Wait! Jack grabbed Annie's other leg. He read out of the book. The rainforest is in 3 layers. Thick treetops at the very top, often over 150 feet in the air, make up the top layer. This is called the forest canopy. Below the canopy is the understory, and then the forest floor on the bottom. That's where the ground is. Get back in here, cried Jack. We are up in the top layer. We're probably more than 150 feet above the ground in the forest canopy. Here's a picture. Look at Annie. Look at the birds. Beautiful. Looks like Polly in the pirate book. And there's butterfly and bugs. And there's another big bird. And look at Annie. She's climbing right out of the window. And Jack says, stop. We're not on the ground. We're in the top of the trees. My goodness. Yikes, said Annie, and she slipped back into the treehouse. We have to use the ladder, said Jack. He got on his hands and knees. He moved leaves away from the hole in the floor, and he looked down. The ladder seemed to fall between the branches of a giant tree, but Jack couldn't see beyond that. I can't tell what's down there, he said. Be careful. Jack put the rainforest book in his backpack, and then he stepped on the rope ladder. He started down. Annie followed with Peanut in her pocket. Jack pushed through the leaves. He came to the understory, below the canopy. He looked way down at the forest floor. It was still very far away. Oh, man, whispered Jack. This world was completely different from the one above the treetops. Now that they were out of the sun, it was cooler. It was also damp and very quiet. Jack shivered. It was the spookiest place he had ever seen. Okay, Chapter 4, millions of them. Jack didn't move. He kept staring down at the forest floor. What's wrong? Annie called from up above. Jack didn't answer. You didn't see any giant spiders, do you? Well, no. Jack took a deep breath. We have to keep going, he thought. We have to find the special thing for Morgan. No spiders. Nothing scary, Jack called, and he started down the ladder again. Jack and Annie climbed down through the understory. Finally, they stepped down onto the forest floor. Only a few rays of light slanted through the gloom. The trees were very, very tall and very big. Vines and moss were hanging everywhere. The ground was covered with dead leaves. Before we do anything, I'd better check the book, said Jack. He pulled out the rainforest book. He found a picture of the dark world under the treetops, and he read out loud. In the rainforest, many living creatures blend in with their surroundings. This is called... Do you know what that's called when creatures look like where they live? It's camouflage. Oh, man, said Jack. He closed the book and looked around. There's tons of creatures down here. We just can't see them because they're all camouflaged. Really? Whispered Annie. She and Jack peered around at the quiet forest. Jack felt unseen eyes watching them. Let's hurry and find the special thing, whispered Annie. Well, how will we know when we find it? Jack said. I think we'll just know, said Annie, and she headed off through the gloom. Jack followed. They crept between the huge trees and past the hanging vines. Annie stopped. Wait, what's that? What's what? Listen, that weird sound. Jack listened. He heard a crackling sound. It sounded like a person walking over the leaves. Jack looked around. He didn't see anybody, but the sound got louder. Was it an animal? A giant bug? One that has never been named? Just then, the silent forest came alive. Birds took off into the air. Frogs hopped over the leaves. Lizards ran up the tree trunks. The weird noises grew louder and louder. Maybe the book explains it, said Jack. He opened the book. He found a picture of different animals running together, and he read out loud. When animals hear a crackling sound, they flee in panic. The sound means that 30 million flesh-eating army ants are marching through the dead leaves. Army ants. Army ants are about this big. They're teeny tiny. But when there's 30 million of them, they take up a huge space. It's army ants, cried Jack. Millions of them. Where? Cried Annie. Jack and Annie looked around wildly. Over there, Annie pointed. There's a picture. She's pointing over to where the army ants are. Look at all the animals. The frog is hopping away. The monkey's scooching around on the vines. They're all trying to get away from the army ants. Army ants, millions and millions of them, were marching over the leaves. Run to the treehouse, cried Annie. Where is it? Said Jack, whirling around. All the trees looked the same. Where was their rope ladder? Just run, cried Annie. Jack and Annie took off. They ran over the dead leaves. They ran between wide tree trunks. They ran past the hanging vines and the mosses. They climbed over thick tree roots. And then Jack saw a clearing ahead. It was filled with sunlight. That way, he cried. Jack and Annie hurried toward the light. They pushed their way through the bushes. They burst out onto the bank of a river. They stared at the slow-moving brown water. Do you think the ants will come this way? Annie said, panting. I don't know, said Jack, but if we wade a few feet into the river, we'll be safe. The ants can't go into the water. Come on, let's go. Look, said Annie. She pointed to a big log rocking at the edge of the river. The inside of the log was dug out. It looks like a canoe, said Jack. A canoe is a kind of a boat. He listened to the crackling sound in the distance. Let's get in it, quick. Jack shoved the book into his backpack, and then he and Annie carefully climbed into the dugout log. Annie leaned out of it. She pushed away from the bank with her hands. Wait, said Jack. We don't have a paddle. Oops, said Annie, and the canoe started moving slowly down the muddy river. Here's the river. This is a photograph. This is the Amazon River. And this is the side where the forest is. And they're going down the river. Okay, we will be back with chapter 5.